This is Chapter 4, Section 3, The Growth of American Cities. So, we're in the time period of the late 1800s. People began moving to the cities from rural farmland areas in rapid succession. And really the reason why was people moved to the cities because industrial revolution brought jobs to American cities. All those factories, there a lot of production was going on. There was a lot of jobs. And factories were close to cities because that's where the people were. Factory needs hundreds or thousands of workers, so go to the cities. That's where all those thousands of workers are. Farming was a hard way of life. It's not easy, and making profits is hard in farming. It is even today, and the pay was consistent. One year you might have a good year, the other you might not. So that factory work, getting that paycheck every week, and be able to rely on that was definitely a draw for a lot of people. And so, also, immigrants would enter the United States through cities, and that's where they would stay because that's where the work was. So that's why a lot of people lived in the cities and were moving there. So, urbanization, that's the rapid growth of cities. In 1860, 1 in 5 Americans lived in the city. So most of them lived in rural areas where there's farmland. Most people were farmers. But in 1890, one in 3 Americans lived in the city. So a third Americans lived in the city. Like I was saying, 1 in 3 Americans now lived in the city. Now, technology helped cities to hold the quickly growing populations. So, electric trolleys and subways helped the movement of mass amounts of people around the city. Uh, there was all these people. If you had to get downtown, it didn't want to take forever for walking and using horse. So, you could get around much quickly in these electric trolleys and subways. Also, steel bridges allowed more traffic being to and from cities, like the Brooklyn Bridge. It still stands today. It was built in the 1870s. It was just pretty much a modern marvel at the time, but it's still around today and it can still carry a lot of weight. And then improved steel allowed architects to build tall buildings that could now house more people. So, cities, they didn't want to expand horizontally, they wanted to expand upwards. They have all that free space. So if they can build buildings, that's free real estate right there. And so the name for these really tall buildings are skyscrapers. They still use that term today. And these very tall buildings, are called that because they believe that they touch or scrape the sky. So really what made it possible for these skyscrapers to be built is the invention of the elevator. So without elevators, these tall buildings really wouldn't be functional because it would just take forever going up and down all those flights of stairs. But an elevator can get you up and down quickly without getting you very tired. So the reason why we have skyscrapers is because of the elevators. So there were some problems with urban life. Fires were a big problem. These tightly packed neighborhoods and cities allowed fires to spread very quickly. In Chicago, Illinois, a fire was started by a cow knocking over a lantern, and then it was a dry, windy time, and so with a lot of wind and stuff is dry, the fire just spread very quickly. And actually set fire to 3 square miles of the city, pretty much burning it to the ground. 300 people were killed. 118,000 were left homeless. Fire departments in the city were just not equipped to battle a fire that size and that devastating. So right here you can see it was just like all ablaze, and that's kind of the ruins. Pictures of ruins of the buildings from the fire. Also, there was crowded housing in cities. These tenement houses, which were buildings divided up in many tiny apartments, were cramped, dark living conditions. It could be up to 10 people living in a single room. In the single room, you'd have all the beds, and you'd have the kitchen in there, so everything you need, and then the bathroom you most likely have to share with other families. Um, almost like a dorm, but but a lot more people. But outbreaks of diseases just spread through these places because of the close quarter living. So the government knew that they had to improve these conditions for people. So what they did, was install street lights on the streets to limit crime at night, because you have all these people and it was pretty dark at night without street lights. Having an actual organized police force, you know, bulking up police forces to handle the crowded people and the increase of crime. More people, more crime, obviously. Establishing fire departments that were more prepared for large fires. Most cities today have actual paid firefighters on call all the time in case a fire occurs, because fires can spread so quickly in cities. Also, hospitals were being built to take care of the growing populations, more people, more sick people, more diseases being spread. And the Salvation Army was established to help poor and homeless. They gave food, clothing, and shelter to people in need, and that's all started during this time. And, the Salvation Army is still around. That's like the Santa Clauses on street corners, in shopping centers. They're ringing the bell. That's the Salvation Army. They're trying to get money for food, clothing, and shelter for the homeless. There was also settlement houses, which are centers offering help to urban poor. Jane Addams, she was a wealthy woman from a wealthy Chicago family, developed the first settlement house. And what she did is she gathered volunteers with her, and they taught immigrants how to speak and write English. They tried to offer nurseries for working mothers. They started youth programs to set up for children to learn music and play sports. So all the stuff it's the same, it's pretty much the first community center, for people to learn how to better themselves. And Jane Addams and supporters pressured the government to also outlaw child labor in factories. So it was about setting up a better generation and helping people improve their lives in the cities. Uh, they wanted children to have an education, to be cultured, so they can have a different life than their parents. So you can see there's Jane Addams when she got older, reading to children, art class, taking care of babies so mothers can work. So just providing all these services for people in cities. All right, so the excitement in city life. So there's one thing that the city offered that rural farmlands just couldn't, and that was, the excitement and entertainment. Department stores in cities started developing during this time, and these are large shopping stores, and we still have department stores today. Macy's, but they have all different goods in one stores, and they're divided up in sections, so people can kind of wander around and shopping for different things all in one store. It became an activity to people look at all the delicate displays and all the goods that were promoted. So that was definitely a pastime and something exciting for people in the city that you couldn't get in rural areas. Also, there was leisure activities. People work long hours in the cities, and it was a hard life, and they lived in cramped apartments, so they were looking for ways to entertain themselves on the time off. They wanted to spend it the best way they could, not unlike today. And cities offered theaters to go watch a play or a musical, orchestras, art galleries to look at, museums to visit. There were zoos to see exotic animals. And in almost every city planned large parks so people can enjoy fresh air and play on some grass and go for a walk without skyscrapers all over them, and kind of enjoy a touch of the country life inside an urban area. This is Central Park. This is the best example. You have all these buildings, all these concrete streets and everything like that, but then you have this large green area in the center called Central Park, and that's where people can gather, play baseball and everything like that. Get away from the crowded city and get a little fresh air. So professional sports leagues were developed in the 1880s in cities. It became a popular entertainment for people in cities. It was nice. They could go out and go outside and watch sports. And this sports really started people getting interested in physical fitness. Physical fitness really wasn't something people were concerned about, mainly because many of them had manual labor jobs. And so, but sports really started that trend. And baseball was the most popular sport. That's why it's called America's pastime. That was the thing that people did in their leisure, the pass the time. Um, the Pittsburgh Pirates, going, local here, were one of the earliest professional sports teams, established in 1891. And Honus Wagner, known as the Flying Dutchman, played for the Pirates during their start, and he was really one of the greatest baseball players at the time. He was kind of like uh, you know, not quite as good as Babe Ruth, but he was pretty amazing for the era, for that early time in the 1890s, early 1900s. He was an amazing player, and he played for the Pirates. And then in 1891, also in Massachusetts, James Naismith invented basketball. He nailed two peach baskets to the opposite ends of a gym and used a soccer ball. Soccer ball was invented and used it and you shot the ball into the basket. And then basketball became a popular winter sport because you didn't have to go outside to play it. So that's kind of how basketball got its start. And then football was predominantly played by men in college. Wasn't really a professional sports team until the 1930s, but it's been played in colleges since the 1860s. The sport was even more brutal than today, if you can believe that. They wore no helmets or pads, so the players are completely unprotected, but still a very violent game. And then in one season, 44 college players actually died from the injuries suffered during a football season. So you can see here just how violent it is playing the sport without any protection. That's a team there, so you're just kind of going at each other, war in people's heads, unprotected. Just a very dangerous, violent sport. We've come a long way, and no one has died in a football game in a long time, so that is good. So that concludes Chapter 4, Section 3, American Cities.